Go ahead and call the Senate to order. Sergeant at Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, we are very pleased to have Reverend Susan Browning of the Unitarian Universalist Churches in both Easton and Chestertown, Maryland, roughly 90 miles apart, so it's putting a lot of miles on serving on the Eastern Shore, guest of the distinguished senator from the 37th District. Please rise for the invocation.
Thank you. Good morning, and greetings from the Eastern Shore. Thank you for having me here today. It is an honor. I invite us now into a time of reflection, a time of prayer. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, gracious God, known in many ways, be with this body as it engages in the work of serving all in the state of Maryland. We take this moment to remind one another that the work of governing is done in the presence of something beyond those here today, something beyond these walls. Among the many ways that you are supported by an amazing cloud of witnesses. We offer this morning our gratitude for those who have come before and have done the painstaking work of bringing justice to life. The work year after year, bill after bill, vote after vote, of making this a better and safer state to be in. We come together too, knowing that the work done today will be a foundation for all who follow. It's in this moment that we just take a chance to say and remind one another we are not isolated beings, but are connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to one another. We pray for all that are here today as you prepare to serve the state in a spirit of compassion, respect, and love. In the many ways we pray, we say amen.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've moved that the body journalize the remarks of Reverend Browning, and I just wanted to thank Reverend Browning again for making the time to join us and open up with a prayer that's been done in the past, and it's just a great honor to have someone from our district to be over here who's made such a difference back home and sharing that love and inspiration right here in Annapolis.
Thank you so much for that, and without objection, most certainly we will journalize the wonderful invocation this morning and appreciate the message. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. All right, has everyone recorded their presence? It appears to almost be so. Okay, the clerk will take the call. With 42 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. We have several resolutions this morning. And so let's go ahead, if we can, and start with Senator from District 1. We have some volleyball players here.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. As they're coming in, if I may, we have with us today the 2023 1A State Volleyball Champion. When quoted about this championship that had happened, what a match, said Clear Spring coach Jessica Custer, who became the 7th coach in county history to win 3 state titles. This is what you hope for when you play a state championship. You hope for a match that will go to 5 sets. That's the point for point and back and forth. Really good volleyball. It brings your emotions, your poise, and everything you have to offer the game. Colleagues, if we could give them a round of applause and celebrate the 2023 1A Maryland State Volleyball Championship from Clear Spring.
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Clear Spring High School girls volleyball team in recognition of winning the 2023 1A Maryland State Volleyball Championship. We applaud your outstanding season and wish you many more. Congratulations. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on the 6th day of March, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the victorious ladies of Clear Springs High School girls volleyball team, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your great achievement and congratulates you on your state championship. Well done. Do you all have the same rule with the double contact, the NCAA? No, not yet. Okay. Oh, interesting. All right. Changes to women's volleyball happening in the NCAA, be it in high school eventually, imagine. Those women's volleyball player fanatics out there. All right, let's go ahead and we have Senator from the 25th District. We have some special guests with us today.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll let my good brothers form at the front. On Friday evening, November 17th, 1911, 3 Howard University undergraduate students, with the assistance of their faculty advisor, gave birth to the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Incorporated. This event occurred in the office of the biology professor, Ernest Everett Just, the faculty advisor, in the science hall, now known as Thurkill Hall on Howard University's campus. The 3 liberal arts students were Bishop Edgar Amos Love, Dr. Oscar James Cooper, and Professor Frank Coleman. From the initials of the Greek phrase meaning friendship is essential to the soul, the name Omega Psi Phi was derived. The phrase was selected as the motto. Manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift were adopted as our cardinal principles. Omega Psi Phi Fraternity is the first international fraternal organization founded on the campus of a historically black college and university, and hosts many impressive members. Some that you may know of, like Michael Jordan or Shaquille O'Neal or Jesse Jackson or even Steve Harvey. But in Maryland, we have our very own state treasurer, Derek Davis. Joining us on the floor is our first vice district representative of the 2nd District, which includes Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Brother Amir Sharif, who will be retiring from the Navy July 1. We also have our 2nd District Government Relations Committee Chair, Brother Derek Green. We have our co-chair of the 2nd District Government Relations Committee, Altman Pinnell. We have the city attorney for Annapolis here with us, Brother Mike Lowes. We have at-large county council member of Prince George's County, Brother Calvin Hawkins. And some of you may have seen this guy on TV. We have the head coach of the University of Maryland football team, Brother Mike Loxley. And finally, there's a special person in the front, a man who I followed and studied at Howard University. I've also followed him and became a member of the United States military. And then I also followed him and joined this illustrious fraternity of great men. My father, Dr. Nick Charles. I'm going to ask that all the members of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated please stand. We have brothers on both sides of the gallery. I'd like to welcome you and ask that you all welcome them too. Mr. President, can the clerk read the resolution?
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Omega Psi Phi Fraternity in recognition of your enduring legacy of serving communities for 113 years while embodying the principles of manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on the 6th day of March, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the gentlemen of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates you and appreciates the work that you do every single day here in the state of Maryland. Thank you all so much. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you. Coach, here we have a good recruitment class coming this year, huh? Tom, exciting times. Appreciate you. Excellent. Thank you all for joining us. All right, we have one additional resolution today. Senator from the 43rd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Continuing with a theme with higher education, you've heard me say many times in this floor that I'm honored to be the senator for a district that has 6 institutions of private and public higher education. But today is Towson University Tiger Pride Day. Founded, yeah, sure, yes, absolutely. Founded in 1866 at the heart of Towson, is a cherished public institution that has over 100 undergraduate programs, 47 doctoral programs, 47 master's programs, 7 doctoral programs, and nearly 20,000 Maryland scholars and students from around the world. Today marks the 25th anniversary of Tiger Pride Advocacy Day, where students from Towson University come to Annapolis to learn more about what we do here, to share their priorities with the Maryland General Assembly, and to represent the black and gold colors with distinction. I am joined today by representatives from the Towson Student Government Association. I have 2 of the names, Sean Bell, Vice President of Student Government Association, and Kayla Brown, Director of Student Services and Affairs. Towson University continues to be a leader with over 85% of the student body registered to vote, and they are dedicated to civil responsibility. Again, I'm honored to represent this wonderful place. Congratulate, and please join me in celebrating the 25th anniversary of Tiger Pride, and I believe there is a resolution at the desk to be read.
The clerk will read the resolution in full.
be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Towson University in recognition of the 25th anniversary of Tiger Pride Advocacy Day. We applaud the efforts of Towson University students and gratefully acknowledge your spirit, enthusiasm, and dedication to your school. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on the 6th day of March, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote?
I invite everyone from Towson to come up.
If so, the clerk will take the call. To the leaders of Towson University, we thank you and celebrate your 25th anniversary of Tiger Pride Advocacy Day. Congratulations. And as a quick Towson aside, if you, encourage everyone to take a look at the higher education overview analysis in the budget review. There's a new ranking of economic mobility index, and Towson was the top scoring in the state of Maryland for all for the highest economic mobility created at any higher ed institution in the state of Maryland. So, great work happening at Towson. Well done. All right, introductions. Yes, Senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we have a Doctor of the Day. Doctor of the Day is Dr. Casey McRoy. He's a radiologist with advanced radiology. I just want to welcome and enjoy your time here.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'll tell you, it was like Omega was in the air, the purple day today. There's lots of purple around. Yes, Senator from Frederick City.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a very special guest today. Her name is Jordan Hayes, and she's Calvert County student member of the Board of Ed. I'm always inspired when students take interest in the work that we do. Jordan is very proactive in representing her student body, and one thing about her advocacy that particularly impresses me, she explains to her fellow students how the blueprint impacts their lives. So, Jordan, wherever you are, please wave and welcome.
Right behind you, Senator. Thank you very much for joining us. Well done. Appreciate you. Senator from the 33rd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have on the floor today two individuals from the Anne Arundel County Office of Community Engagement, dear friends of mine, Courtney Buniscus and Tiana Parker. Courtney is a resident of District 30, a proud native of Southern Anne Arundel County, longtime instructor at Anne Arundel Community College. She currently serves as the vice chair of the Anne Arundel County Democratic Central Committee, and she's also a wonderful community engagement officer for Regions 5, 8, and 9. Tiana, my constituent, previously served as Chief of Staff for Delegate Shanika Henson. She also serves as a Community Engagement Officer for the county. I know how much we value our partnerships with the county, especially on constituent issues, and they both promptly respond to issues that arise, and so I just want to thank them, and if you could give them a round of applause.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your great work. Senator from the 25th District.
Busy day over here today. Today we acknowledge the presence of the academic leaders of Prince George's County District 25. The Chesapeake Math and IT Academic South High School continues to serve the Prince George's County youth in District 25 by challenging students to their maximum academic and social capacity and developing critical thinkers and problem solvers. Mr. President and my esteemed colleagues, it is my pleasure to introduce the AP class from Chesapeake Math and IT Academy South High School from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Please
Wonderful.
give them a warm welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Keep up the great work. Keep up that great work. Well done. Enjoy your time in Annapolis. All right, Senator from the 40th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, joining the body today is the Bard High School for Early College, also known as Bard Baltimore, for their Advocacy Day at the Capitol. Bard Baltimore is located in District 40, which is a public school that offers students the opportunity to earn up to 60 college credits and an associate's degree, along with their high school diploma. Bard Baltimore has already had a demonstrated impact in the community. The most recent graduating class had an 88% high school graduation rate, with only over 40% earning 60 credits and an AA degree. Colleagues, please join me and welcome Bard Baltimore to the chambers this morning.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Another great, great institution. Bard is doing some really great work. Welcome. Enjoy your time today. Senator from Howard and Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the forward gallery, we have a graduate student and resident physician from Johns Hopkins, Tara Kadia, and wanted to ask the body to give a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some of you, let me check. Okay, we're all over 18. Some of you on the floor may have known me as Santa Claus for 67 trains this year in December. And in the gallery, one of my elves is here, Miss Jill Redding from Baltimore County. She was not on this year's trains, but last year was teaching me for the 37 trains that we were on there. So let's give Jill a warm welcome. One of my elves for the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad Polar Express.
Welcome, welcome. We're glad you took a stop from the North Pole to join us here today. Excellent. All right, any further introductions? Any further introductions? No? All right, so be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We have an appointment, a message from the executive. Clerk will read the message.
Dear President Ferguson, in accordance with Article 2, Section 13 of the Constitution of Maryland, I am pleased to submit the following appointment nomination for confirmation by the Maryland State Senate. This individual brings exceptional knowledge and ability to the office for which they have been nominated. I am confident they will provide the strength of experience and leadership to instill confidence among all of our citizens and ensure we succeed in our commitment to leave no Marylander behind. I look forward to your favorable approval of this nominee. Thank you for your assistance and support. Sincerely, Wes Moore, Governor.
Message having been read is ordered journalized. It will be referred to the Committee on Executive Nominations. We have let's go ahead and start with our layover bill from yesterday. This is layover calendar number 11. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 527, Senator Kelly, Community Colleges, Contraception Access Requirements. Question is on the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the committee amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 527 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Let's go to, actually, let's go ahead and start. Do we have judicial proceedings here? We don't. Okay. Let's go to Education, Energy, and the Environment, calendar number 17. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 308, Chair, Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Housing and Community Development, Just Community Designation, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd District as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This departmental bill authorizes the governor, on the recommendation of the Secretary of Housing and Community Development, to designate areas as just communities if the Secretary determines that the area meets certain criteria. Some of the specifics of the bill are that an area may be defined as a just community if past and current trends in home ownership, property values, commercial and residential vacancy, or businesses or housing investment show a need for investment. Number 2, that the area has been neglected and has been significantly impacted by state action, whether in terms of redlining, exclusionary zoning. If there has been the demolition of residential neighborhoods through the use of eminent domain by the state or federal government. If the state imprisonment rate in the communities are higher than 750 per 150,000, and also if there are unequal exposure to environmental hazards. One more thing. In order to maintain a community as a just community, every 5 years it has to be evaluated. And when they are designated, it's an area for priority and funding. Now, this priority and funding will not supplant or override other housing and community development programs. This is a new program with its own funding. There are no committee amendments, so I ask for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the floor leader.
Will the floor leader yield? Senator may proceed.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
It says just community. I tried to find a definition for the term just.
Yeah.
Can you just define that for me? Because it sounds a little bit like livable communities, in which we've had in the past under
Right, yeah.
Department of Housing and Community Development.
Yeah, specifically, this is targeting, the sustainable communities don't specifically target state actions or local government actions like redlining, segregation, demolition, eminent domain. So it's creating a different category.
Thanks.
All right. Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask the floor leader to yield.
Will the floor leader yield? Senator may proceed.
Thank you. So does this have, are there specific communities already in mind, or are we going to embark upon I mean, was testimony that there are some specific communities that right now would fit this criteria?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I expressed some of those concerns during the hearing. The way I read this, it's a very sets forward policy and more of a legislative intent, and also just creating a specific opportunity to identify. It does implies some criteria, some of the things I already mentioned.
Does, as I look at the bill here, does it put it ahead of other, it says priority funding. Priority funding over what? Because I'm honestly not as familiar with how DHCD categorizes these things.
Right.
Could you explain what that means?
So HCD has a number of priority funding areas. For example, there's been a number of pockets of divestment throughout Maryland, particularly in some rural areas. So there's been priority funding in South Cumberland and Allegheny County. So they're kind of focusing, they've done that. There have been priority areas in Aberdeen and Edgewood and Harford County where they've had rental properties with lead and mold. So they have a number of areas across the state where there's been focused priority funding to address certain issues.
So thank you for that answer. So for example, our state a couple of decades ago started a priority renewable energy tier 1 renewables. There was tier 1 and tier 2. And tier 1 was supposed to be completely renewable, but we allow burning trash to be one of those tier 1 renewables, correct?
Well, you and I are aligned on that, yes.
And so a community that may have been subjected to burning trash, it's conveniently that certain communities were more likely to be subjected to that than others, it seems like. So is this getting at that issue?
Environmental impacts is not explicit. That is actually something I'd like to add. This is the department.
You can hold it for an amendment.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. But this is specifically focused on more the community and economic development side. I do believe that there will be a bill coming to the floor, hopefully, that may address some of the things that you're mentioning.
If I could ask, you talked a good bit about redlining.
Yeah.
And I actually think of all the issues, we wrestle back and forth sometimes with how we deal with things that happened in the past and how fair is it for people today to have to deal with what's happened in the past. It's a big national conversation. And I think we may come down differently on different sides. Redlining's always been interesting to me because clearly government, and it actually happened in a lot of northeastern cities where redlining was conducted. How much of that is the responsibility, though, of a state government and state taxpayers versus how much was it the responsibility of, for example, banking institutions in the federal government or even local authorities? And the reason I ask that question is this bill looks like it's really putting certain areas in the front of the line for funding when they already were probably predisposed to be at the front of the line for certain types of grants and funding. So I'm just trying to understand how we're categorizing all this.
So it's interesting because I actually taught a class on all that this year around state actions. So there have been state actions. There are state programs. Don't you think it's all of our responsibility to make sure that communities that have been sorry, Mr. President, this bill addresses a responsibility that all of us, state, federal, as well as local, to beginning to rebuild our communities. So while redlining is one of the indicators, the real goal is that we have communities that have experienced divestment, that the experience is not something that has just happened 50 or 60 years ago, but it continues to be seen. So also, there is, Mr. President, a narrative that if some are lifted up, then that means the rest of us lose. And that is not at all what this bill does. It creates a special priority, a special program. The existing programs will continue. As I could say, there's actually a special program, Mr. President, called the Rural Maryland Prosperity Investment Fund. And that investment fund gives grant recipients educational summer enrichment programs, new affordable housing programs, expanded broadnet and internet, new homes, and medical transportation, and living in an urban area, I would not deny the fact that we should support, or that some of my tax dollars should support rural communities.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the answers. It's always been an interesting issue. Mr. President, I don't think I have an amendment for this. I just wanted to be sure we understood what this was and what it's doing. I always have concerns about, I think we do need to build in when we have grant funding for things like housing and community development, whether it's in any areas of poverty, I think certainly are worthy of investment. Just trying to understand how this works with what we already put in place to prioritize. And I think there's some common agreement about some of the issues that communities face. So thank you for your answers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes the Senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you yield for a question, please?
Oh, absolutely.
Senator may
Thank you
proceed.
very much. How do they select these areas?
Well, the areas have not been selected, so it's creating, as the bill, it's just creating a policy position, essentially, that we need to develop these areas. But certainly, Mr. President, areas like Dundalk, Turner Station, some of the communities that have been historically impacted by the closure of Bethlehem Steel, for example, I believe that those immigrant communities, who work there, are experiencing a lack of investment. That would be a prime candidate for one of these grants.
Oh, I kind of understand that we need some development for housing. I think there's some areas that can be a priority because, there's areas that are underdeveloped, but there's areas that also are overdeveloped, and that's a concern to me. I think to a lot of people here that we have some areas that have been developed so much that they don't have the room to do even more. But I think we're still kind of pushing the envelope down, Mr. President, and I just think I'm kind of concerned about that a little bit. I understand, for instance, the jobs that we've had, and it's great that we're continuing to promote that. But again, my biggest concern is in areas that are overdeveloped, and I do not want that to continue. But I want to see more development in many ways, but I don't want the problem in some areas where we can just do way too much, and that's just a concern, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
All right, on the report, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 308 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 573, Senator Quarterman, General Provisions, State Flag, Casket of an Eligible Decedent, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing the Senator from the 23rd District as the floor leader.
Thank you and good morning, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill requires the Secretary of State to furnish a state flag to drape the casket of an eligible decedent as defined under the bill. After the burial of an eligible decedent, the state flag must be claimed by and provided to the eligible decedent's next of kin, or provided to a close friend or an associate if it is not claimed by the eligible decedent's next of kin. The Secretary of State may not procure any state flag as required under the bill unless it is wholly produced in the United States. However, the Secretary of State may waive this requirement if it cannot be met reasonably. There is one committee amendment. The amendment requires the Secretary of State to implement the requirements on request and to adopt regulations establishing a process to submit and verify a request. I move adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Chair recognizes, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County.
Just a quick question for the floor leader.
Will the floor leader yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much. In terms of flags, are we talking a U.S. flag or a state flag?
This state flag, Maryland state flag.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 573 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 629, Senator Guile, State Board of Cosmetologists, membership alteration, favorable.
Recognizing the senator from District 3 as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This bill alters the membership of the State Board of Cosmetologists, and what it does is it includes one more licensed esthetician, but it reduces the number of consumer members of the board from 2 to 1. There were no committee members, or there were no committee amendments, and there's no fiscal impact. I move for the favorable report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion on the report? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 629 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 649, Senator Kagan, Public Safety Answering Point Personnel Training in Telecommunications, Cardiopulmonology, Resuscitation, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, roughly 350,000 Americans die outside of a hospital having a cardiac arrest, and yet there is an option for us to try to provide some support. There was a pilot program in Charles County that found that more than twice as many people were able to live through a heart attack incident and leave a hospital alive if there had been training for the 911 specialists, our courageous women and men under the headset. Quarterly training, one-on-one, 15 minutes with feedback led to increased, improved sort of muscle memory so that they could provide better support for whoever was calling with a possible heart attack. Every minute that someone is not given CPR is a 10% increase that they are likely to die. So again, after 10 minutes, it may be too late. And so by the time a paramedic could arrive, it could be too late. So we need to train, make sure our folks under the headsets are ready to help. This funding for our friends on budget and taxation, this funding comes from not the general fund, but the special fund of the 911 fund run by the 911 board. The bill passed unanimously. There are 2 amendments. The first is technical. The second removes any standards because those might change over the years. There already is standard training for 911 specialists to be certified, so it doesn't need to be in the code. That's going to be maintained, but this authorizes CPR, telephonic CPR training as an allowable expenditure as part of the 911 fund. I move the adoption of the 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 649 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1044, Senator Guile, Cosmetologist Aesthetic Services definition, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognizing Senator from District 3 is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill alters the definition of provide aesthetic services to include some specific services. However, the bill also excludes from the definition the diagnosis of illness, disease, or injury, and also performing ablation of the dermis or hypodermis. There was 1 committee amendment that excludes makeup from the definition of providing aesthetic services. This bill was voted out of committee unanimously, so I move for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from District 12.
Yeah, I have an amendment.
Oh, 1 moment. Let's get report. Any discussion of the report? Any objections on the report? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Senator from District 12 has a amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the pages or the senator's amendment. Give us just a moment to get it distributed, Senator. laser light-based divorce. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. This amendment simply clarifies that cosmetologists cannot use lasers in their procedures because lasers should be reserved for folks that have the specialized training for lasers. Cleared this with the sponsor and hope to take this as a friendly amendment.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader. Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
We consider that a friendly amendment, Mr. President.
All right. Any objections from the floor on the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1044 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to report number 18 out of EEE. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 417, Senator Hayes, Election Administration, State Administrator, Local Boards, and Election Directors, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing Vice Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, every 4 years, we basically get a job evaluation. And that's if we put our name on the ballot, the voters get to decide whether we're doing a good job. And yet our election administrators have kind of been exempt from that. So this bill will institute that. The state administrator will be evaluated, and so will the 24 local county administrators. This will lead to greater accountability, greater transparency, and we need to make sure that everyone is complying with the laws that we're passing. Make sure no one's going rogue or getting sloppy with protocols, and it's the local boards that will have the opportunity to fire or discipline. 20 of the 24 local boards are supervised and managed by the state board. There is one amendment that indicates that the state administrator should check in with the staff of the local, each local board of elections and the board members so that the administrator is not doing an evaluation on their own. So I move the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the minority whip on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if the floor leader would yield for a question.
Will the floor leader yield?
Of course.
Senator may proceed.
I think this sounds like a great idea. So my question is, and I didn't have a time to look at the bill very closely. You say that, so every county has an election board and they pick their administrator, correct, at the county level? How does that work currently? We just had a changeover in Carroll, but how does it work?
Right, you did, because
Yeah.
Katie Berry is now deputy at the
Correct.
state level.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, in 4 of the counties, we're independent. Montgomery County is independent. We pay for our folks ourselves, hire them, supervise them, and all that. But most of the state, it's the state board of elections, it's the state administrator who does the supervision and oversight with support and collaboration with this amendment from the local boards.
So how did the new administrator in for example, my county, how were they hired? What was the process? Or for the 20 counties that aren't independent, does the local board identify somebody?
It's handled by the state, to my knowledge, because they are considered state employees in 20 of our counties.
Okay. So this would just say every 4 years, the state administrator and state election board will review the local administrators?
That's correct.
And the local staff is
I'm sorry, not every 4 years. I didn't think that was right. At least annually. We want to make sure that there aren't any problems, that people are in compliance, and again, doing it transparently.
Okay, and then it's the election administrator and the election board at the state level that do this review?
Correct.
Okay. And then if they find that something's amiss, is it similar to an audit finding, unless it's some serious issue? Or what might an annual review look like if it wasn't like, hey, everything's great?
Right. Some of that would be TBD, to be determined, right? Because we don't know. This is a new practice. But it would enable the gathering of data of a performance evaluation, so then there could be discipline, there could be feedback and education, more accountability, and possibly a firing.
If someone has a complaint locally about their election board or administrator, currently they come to the state, correct? Or do they?
I am not sure how that goes, because there is no process that exists now. Right now, the 24 people, or 20 of the local board administrators, work independently, function independently, and yet are state employees. There just isn't enough oversight and accountability. So this bill by the good senator from District 40 would institute that.
I support the bill. I wonder, could I hold it for a day just to look at, there's one thing I'm curious about. I wouldn't mind having a little bit more clear process for what happens if a local person has a complaint or a
Problem
concern.
at all. That's fine, Mr. President.
One other question, does this does this also means that the state administrator is up for review?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Who I like, the new one, but I'm just saying.
You and me
okay.
both. Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mr.
Senator.
President.
Senator.
I'm happy to lay it over for a day. It may be fine, but I just want to check one thing. Thank you.
All right. Senator has moved to lay the bill over under the rule, and the motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lay over under the rule. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 480, the President Protecting Election Officials Act of 2024, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor, the Vice Chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Yes, Mr. President. I think everyone has seen the press about the epidemic of threats on our election officials. As a result of those, not only are they under pressure, but they are leaving their jobs, which is causing new folks who don't have the experience to take on the jobs at a time when there's increased scrutiny. We need to defend our election officials and make it abundantly clear that threats against them are completely unacceptable. So this is a bill, this is a priority bill by this governor, by this administration, and what else do I need to tell you? It would be about threats that are verbal, electronic, or in writing, and the committee amended it to expand who's covered. So it's not just a state administrator, obviously, but it's anyone who's an election judge. The senator from Anne Arundel County made sure that the student pages were included. Anyone who is canvassing, helping to scan, helping to greet people, anyone who is involved in our election process as an election official should be protected. A violation would be imprisonment not to exceed 3 years and or a fine not to exceed $2,500. And Mr. President, there are 2 amendments. The first adds a co-sponsor. The second, as I said, expands the definition of election official. I move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the senator from District 7.
Thanks. Just a quick question.
Will the floor leader yield?
Of course.
Senator may proceed.
Thanks. Does this just deal with like election day and the officials there at the location, or does this deal with the actual campaigns and their workers who are out door knocking and doing regular campaign stuff?
This would not cover, so people who are out door knocking, our volunteers, our people, our staff are completely not covered.
Okay.
These are election officials, so county or state employees who are doing the people's business, who are running our democracy.
But okay, so what about election day? If I'm on, I'm coming to, hand out literature for candidate X, I'm on the, the election locations.
Yep. Vote for Bob, vote for Sue. Thought about it, but those folks are not included. But anyone inside, anyone greeting, anyone checking in, anyone doing you guys have heard me talk about the manual duplication of the mail-in ballots, the internet-delivered ballots, all of those folks, the people who help you scan your ballot, all of those people would be covered by this.
Okay, thanks.
All right, on the 2 amendments, Chair recognizes the senator from 44th District.
Thank you, sir. A question for the floor leader?
Will the floor leader yield? Senator may
Yes, sir.
proceed.
There's a couple questions. The first question on page 2 with the definition of harm. I'm just wondering, are we to read serious injury and serious emotional distress? They're 2 separate prongs. Am I reading that correct? So harm could include a serious injury or serious emotional distress?
I believe that is right, yes.
All right. And the second question, is this temporal? Is this just when elections are going on, or is this something that's in effect throughout
So there are obviously more people, the staffing goes up when we're starting early voting, when we're doing election day, when we're canvassing and working towards certifying election results. There are more people who would be covered because there are more people working, but year-round, all the time, whether
All
or
the
not it's an
time.
election year, we want our election people protected.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
All right. On the two amendments, any further discussion? Any objection to the two committee amendments? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Appears the committee may have an amendment. The pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment, committee's amendment. Right. Just one moment.
Going to wait until people get this so I can talk slowly about what this amendment does.
Let's see. Okay, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last night at midnight, I realized that that this really needed to be an emergency bill. We want to make sure that rather than a June 1st effective date, that it starts as soon as is practicable, and that includes before our May 14th primary. So I would like to move the adoption of an amendment that would make this bill an emergency and go into effect as soon as the governor were to sign it.
All right, the senator moves the amendment. Are there any objections from the committee amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 480 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 494, Senator Kagan, Election Law, Post-Election Procedures, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader. Election Day.
This is Election Day here in the Senate. Colleagues, after the I think I want to say the fiasco of the 2020 elections and the competing slates of electors, Congress actually passed legislation to fix it and to make it clear. And they passed the Electoral College Reform Act of 2022 that streamlines the process and clarifies the rules for what to do when there are competing slates of electors or anyone has any questions about those allegations of who won an election and which electoral lists should be counted. So the federal calendar was moved up for certification so that there would be more time. The State Board of Canvassers, rather than 35 days, would have 30 days. This is kind of a technical bill. It is required by the federal government that we pass this. The State Board Administrator has 3 days to then take the State Board of Canvassers' results and transmit them to the governor. The governor then officially reports them. They go, as you know, to the Congress, where the Vice President of the United States officially counts our electoral votes. So this will clarify in case there's an error or any fraud, it could be investigated or refuted. So with that, there are two amendments. The first is technical, and the second one I'm going to need my reading glasses for. The second one just goes through kind of exactly what I just talked about. A board of canvassers that determines if there's an error or if there's fraud. The state administrator of elections, again, reviews it, makes a determination. They maintain a file of the state determination, and there was a typo in the bill that the state administrator submits the report within 3 days rather than 30 days. And with that, Mr. President, I'd like to move the adoption of the two committee amendments in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Again, if I could ask the floor leader to yield just on one point.
Senator may proceed.
Of course.
Changing it from 30 days to 3 days?
Yeah.
So just so I'm understanding, I think clarifying post-election procedures is smart. I think it was good that they've done that. And we've never had an issue in Maryland before. That doesn't mean we shouldn't make sure things are clear. I'm a little confused by the hurrying of the timeline, only because if there was some sort of not so much, usually statewide elections here are not particularly close, but we sometimes might have a close local or congressional race. So what's being hurried up as far as certifying, what was the 30 to 3 days? I guess I didn't understand that part.
There are kind of a bunch of numbers in this bill. So there is from 35 days to 30 days for the State Board of Canvassers to certify the election results. And so that's de minimis, and that's making sure that there's plenty of time to make sure that we can get our certification done in time, that our electors can meet, that the results can be transmitted. And literally the 3 days was a typo that the state administrator has to tell the governor, has to pass along the results.
Oh,
And
after the 30 days,
after
they
the
have 3
30
days, not 30
it's
days.
3 days, not another 30 days,
Correct.
or we might
Understood.
not be done until March.
Okay, I understand. And the State Board of Canvassers, and this is interesting, but I don't really know much about who that is or who are those people?
I think that's something we're all learning about. So there are local boards of canvassers, and they deal sort of at the grassroots. It goes up to the State Board of Elections, which are the official administrators, and then obviously the staffer, the administrator, is the one who officially transmits the information after 3 days to the governor.
So a year and a half ago, when I was at when I visited the counting of the ballots in Carroll County for a local election, it was very close. That is our Board of Canvassers, is the people that are counting those votes?
Correct. Well, or
and tabulating the machine.
or employees, or yes. So there's a board. It's not just all the employees.
Yeah, it's the board of, so the local board of election in every county really is the board of canvassers for the county?
I think that's right. Let me just see if that's right. 30 was a typo. I said that. Secretary of State, Comptroller, Clerk of the Supreme Court, not the State Board. Okay, so the State Board of local board of canvassers. Yes, the State Board. It is the State Board of. Hold on, now you get me all turned around. The State Board of Canvassers is different from the State Board of Elections.
Okay.
So it's not our 5-member. It is
Who is it?
actually more, it's higher end than that. It's our Secretary of State, our Comptroller, our State Treasurer, the Clerk of the Supreme Court, and the Attorney General. And that's the State Board of Canvassers. Once they review the results that have been submitted and that's after any allegations of fraud or error have been resolved.
Any sort of court proceeding, or, well, maybe not.
Probably not. There's not a lot of time for that, but it would come.
But they're reviewing it for the legality and just the overall
accuracy.
They're not sitting there and recounting mail ballots or something.
No,
right?
no
Okay.
time for that.
Okay.
So this highfalutin group then reviews the results. Then again, that is given to the state administrator, who will have 3, not 30 days to get it to the governor.
Okay, and then that's the certification.
That's the certification. Okay. Then we transmit it to Washington.
Thank you for walking through that. I don't know how many people in the body necessarily cared about it, but I thought it was important, and I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
Excellent. Senator from District 6.
Just looking at the bill real quick, just if I could ask a question to the floor leader.
Senator may proceed.
Of course.
I see that it says those that are in error. Is that defined in the bill, or is it already in law that is defined already?
I think error means error.
No, but I'm saying error, but some things can be in question if that's an error or not. So is it defined?
I think the word error means error. So if you say my candidate got more votes than your candidate, and I say the opposite, and you think it's because of an error, then that has to be resolved. So whether it's an error or fraud, that allegation can be submitted, and that will be adjudicated, investigated, and then the results will be filed officially.
Okay. Just wondering, because it just seems that could go anyway for a number of reasons. So thank you.
All right. On the amendments, further discussion? Any objection to the committee amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended committee report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 494 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 495, Senator Kagan, election law, petitions and ballot questions, plain language requirement, favorable.
Sticking with the Vice Chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, colleagues, I'm going to read you two of the ballot measures that were presented to the voters in 2022. Question number 2 was, quote, adds to the eligibility requirements to serve as a senator or a delegate to the Maryland General Assembly by requiring a person to have maintained a primary place of abode in the district that the person has been chosen to represent. Under current law, a person must have resided in the district to which the person has been elected for at least 6 months immediately preceding the date of the person's election, or if the district has been established for less than 6 months prior to the date of election, as long as the district has been established. The new law requires, beginning January 1 of 2024, a person must have resided in and maintained a primary place of abode in the district for the same time periods as under current law. I'm not sure how many of us, let alone our constituents, would have any idea what that says. That was question 2. Question 4 asked, do you favor the legalization of the use of cannabis by an individual who is at least 21 years of age on or after July 1, 2023 in the state of Maryland? That's really clear. This bill, colleagues, which we passed unanimously in 2020, would allow us to join 13 other states, 21 other states. 21 other states that have ballot measures that have adopted laws about easily understood language. It just requires the reference of the Plain Language Act that has been in existence and says that all of our ballot measures should be understood by anyone with a 6th grade education. Not all of us have PhDs or law degrees, and we should make sure that our ballot is legible and understandable, comprehensible by our voters. There was a 400,000 vote drop-off between our constituents who voted for governor and voted for ballot measures. And I think we need to close that gap by making sure they know what it is they're voting on. So with that, there were no committee amendments, so I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the minority leader on the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The floor leader would yield for just a couple questions.
Sure.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. In your explanation, the first part is about the petition process, right? It talks about the process and the having a question that goes out and requires signatures, right? And then with respect to that, then it must consider or should consider the guidelines of the Federal Plain Writing Act, correct?
Not really.
Okay.
This bill doesn't affect any of that. This is just about the language that goes on the ballot. The process is unchanged.
Okay, so it truly is the language that's on the ballot. So
That's all.
That was my next question. So a lot of that time, like for instance, there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot this year dealing with reproductive rights. We determined that language. Is that right?
We determined that it's going on the ballot, and then there is a process.
It looks like in the bill from last year, you know, we wrote very specifically somewhat of the same language that you just read, you know, that every person as a central component of an individual's rights to liberty and equality has the fundamental right, reproduction freedom. We mentioned all that. It's in the legislation. So my question is, we didn't use this Federal Plain Writing Act in order to put that on the ballot.
Well, it's not the law yet, Senator.
Okay, so what you're saying then is that this language, because the bill references that the Board of Elections must do this, but this language would then apply to us as well too, as we're doing constitutional amendments or ballot questions or anything like that?
So generally, the Secretary of State manages this.
Correct.
And it would be mandating on them unless we, in statute, come up with specific language. But it's appropriate that we pass language that is comprehensible to our voters.
So I don't have a problem with that necessarily, and like you said, other states are doing it. The concern I have is the bottom part of the bill, where we now have to put this in language that elementary school kids can understand. Why are we dumbing down our policy so much that it has to be understood by someone with a 6th grade reading level?
That is seen as the best practice, and the percentage of Marylanders, hold on. I had the numbers of the percentage of Marylanders that haven't graduated from college that have, let's see if I can get that for you really fast. Bottom line is, we want it easy for Marylanders to vote. We've passed a lot of laws on that. But once they get their ballot, we want them to understand what their choices are. And again, if 400,000 Marylanders chose not to vote because of examples like the one that I read, they're not really getting the franchise.
That might not be an exact correlation. I'm sure that it might be accurate numbers.
I think everyone understood what cannabis was.
Well, again,
question number 4 was really clear.
You mentioned that, and again, that probably could have had a lot more language to it, that we were going to also open up the industry, that we were going to talk about licensing, but we very specifically did not put that in there because we were trying to make sure the voters that the issue was dumbed down enough that they said, do you want to legalize marijuana or not?
I'm going to suggest, Senator, that it not be considered dumbing down, that it's considered basically taking a litmus test. This was taking a snapshot of voter reaction. Do you want cannabis or not? They voted yes, and then we did the details of taxation and location, and the local governments deal with zoning and noise and graffiti and just all the other implications.
And a lot of that probably could have been explained to the voters so that they knew what was really going on with that legislation rather than just what we wanted them to believe, which
we
is why
hadn't enacted that yet.
We knew we were going to enact that.
Yes, but that was the next step.
Well, but again, we knew we were going in that direction. So again, I don't have a problem with this Federal Plain Writing Act. I just don't understand why we need this additional information that talks about a 6th grade level of reading. And how is that determined? Is the Board of Election knows what 6th graders can read as opposed to what 7th and 8th graders can read?
As I said, there's a Federal Plain Language Act. There's a website. It's really easy to find that, actually. And again, 21 other states have already done this. Red and blue states around the country.
So that was again my question. Is it two different things? Is the Federal Plain Writing Act different from the capability to read at a 6th grade level? Are those two different things?
I'm not really understanding that question. Could you try again?
Yes. Why do we need to have in the bill that it needs to be understood by an individual who has attained not higher than a grade 6 level of reading comprehension if we already have that it must comply with the guidelines of the Federal Plain Writing Act? Why do we need both?
I think specificity, Senator, is generally a good idea when we enact legislation.
Okay. Well, again, I think that we have gotten now into the point if we're having to do exactly that. Is that what the other 21 states are doing?
Yes.
They're doing the 6th grade reading level?
I would have to check and see whether all of them have chosen 6th grade. But if I had to bet, I would say yes. I think that has become best practice. And several of them have enacted it recently.
Writing ballot questions for elementary school kids to understand. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. On the report, further discussion. Dear Senator from District 7.
Thank you. I have a question for the floor leader.
Will the floor to you?
Deals with the metrics you gave. You said during the election, people voted for governor, lieutenant governor, and then you had a drop-off to ballot initiatives. What was it 400,000, I believe?
Yes, sir.
What was the drop-off once you got below governor to, let's say state senate, House of Delegates?
Oh, I think there was a bump up, especially in your district. I don't know. I don't have that. We were comparing top of the ticket to...
Could you get that for me? I'd like to know, because it's kind of interesting to see, the bump down. If it, is there a precipitous drop for as you go down the ballot, or, is this just an outlier. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
While I have the floor, if I could, Mr. President, I just want to read the list of states that have already done this. Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Florida, Idaho, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maine, Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, Nevada, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming.
All right. On the report, any further discussion? Any objections to the report? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 495 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to finance. We've got our first consent calendar of the year coming out of finance. Clerk will read the calendar.
Finance report number 15, consent calendar number 1.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is my first consent calendar, too. The alcohol bills on this consent calendar are local bills, have no amendments, are supported by the relevant county Senate delegations, and pass the committee unanimously. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report on the consent calendar. Senators, please take a quick look. Are there any bills that senators wish to separate? Any bills for separation? If not, are there any objections to the consent calendar report? Without objection, the report is adopted, and bills on consent calendar number 1 are hereby ordered printed for third reading. We've got another one, consent calendar 2. Clerk will read the calendar.
Finance report number 16, consent calendar number 2.
Recognize the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, these are alcohol bills on this consent calendar or local bills, have no amendments, are supported by the relevant county Senate delegations, and pass the committee unanimously. I move the adoption of this favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report for the consent calendar. Please take a moment to look at the bills on the calendar. Are there any bills for separation? Are there any objections to the favorable consent calendar report? Without objection, the consent calendar is adopted and the bills are ordered printed for third reading. Sticking with finance, calendar number 13, back to the one-on-ones. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 45, Senator McCray, Baltimore City Alcoholic Beverages, BD7 licenses, hours of sales, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing the senator from the 40th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 45 alters the geographic area in the 45th Alcoholic Beverage District in Baltimore City, where a holder of a Class BD7 beer, wine, and liquor license may not sell alcoholic beverages before 9 a.m. or after 10 p.m. And a license holder, other than licensee specified, may not sell alcoholic beverages before 9 a.m. or after 10 p.m. and may not have hours extended if they begin later than 9 a.m. or end before 10 p.m. The amendment modifies the boundary of the alcoholic beverages district at issue under the bill. I move the amendment and adoption of a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 45 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 561, Frederick County Senators, Frederick County Alcoholic Beverages Manufacturers Limited Beer, Wine, and Liquor Permit, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing Senator from Carroll County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 561 authorizes the Frederick County Board of License Commissioners to issue a manufacturer's limited beer, wine, and liquor BWL permit to a holder of a Class 1 distillery license or a Class 5 brewery license in Frederick County. The permit authorizes the holder to allow a licensed caterer or other contracted party to provide sealed beer, wine, and liquor products that are not manufactured by the holder during private events for on-premises consumption at the licensed premises. The license holder must request approval from the board before each event. The amendment prohibits the license holder, which would be a Class 1 distillery or Class 5 brewery, from having a direct, indirect pecuniary or financial interest in the licensed caterer or other contracted party. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 561 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We're kind of going quick through these for those who are joining us. These are pretty non-controversial alcohol bills, but we got to go through the process. So, clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 734, Harford County Senators, Harford County Alcoholic Beverages Performing Arts Nonprofit Organization License, favorable with 2 amendments.
So some of them do get good ideas. I steal a lot of ideas during these. Do we have a floor leader on this one? 734 Harford County. Senator from the 37th District. 37th on this one as the floor leader.
I apologize, Mr. President. Thank you. Senate Bill 734 establishes a performing arts nonprofit organization beer, wine, and liquor license in Harford County. The Harford County Board of License Commissioners may issue the new license for use on the premises of the performing arts nonprofit organization. The license authorized the holder to sell or serve beer, wine, liquor at retail for on-premises consumption at up to 3 locations designated at the time of application. The license holder may sell or serve beer, wine, liquor 1 hour before and after a performance, during an intermission, and during a reception within 1 hour before or after a performance. The license holder must serve or offer for sale snacks at all times when beer, wine, liquor are sold. Amendment 1 makes changes to the purpose paragraph. Amendment 2 renumbers instead of repealing a provision that establishes a separate performing arts theater beer and wine license. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 734 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 767, Frederick County Senators, Frederick County Alcoholic Beverages Promoters License, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from Carroll County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, Senate Bill 767 alters the promoter's permit in Frederick County that authorizes the permit holder to sell beer, wine, and liquor at an event. The Frederick County Board of License Commissioners may issue the promoter's a permit for use by a for-profit organization that publicizes, sells tickets for, organizes, operates, produces, or stages an event where alcoholic beverages are sold or served. Amendment number 1 makes changes to the title of the bill. Amendment number 2 prohibits a permit holder from holding an alcoholic beverages license and makes technical changes. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 767 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 933, Harford County Senators, Harford County Alcoholic Beverages Performing Arts Theater License, favorable with 2 amendments.
Harford County's getting all the cultural movement right now. All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 933 alters existing eligibility criteria for a performing arts theater license in Harford County. The bill authorizes the Harford County Board of License Commissioners to issue the license to a for-profit organization instead of a nonprofit organization. The bill also authorizes the holder of a performing arts theater license to sell liquor for on-premises consumption in addition to beer and wine, and increases the annual license fee from $500 to $1,500. Amendment 1 makes a change to the title of the bill. Amendment 2 strikes a provision that authorizes the issuance of a Class C per diem license to a performing arts theater. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 933 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 964, Senator Reedy, Carroll County Alcoholic Beverage Licenses, Alcohol Awareness Training, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 964 requires that in Carroll County, an alcoholic beverages license holder or individual designated by the license holders who is in a supervisor capacity to be certified by an alcohol awareness training program and be present on the licensed premises during the hours in which the alcoholic beverages may be sold. The bill also requires at least one individual who's listed on the license as a license holder to maintain a current certificate that reflects the completion of alcohol awareness program while the individual is listed on the license. And the bill also establishes specified penalties for a violation of requirements under the bill. Essentially, it's for taverns, bars, and restaurants to be sure they always have somebody on site that has the alcohol awareness training. And generally, most of our folks, I think, have already been complying with it anyway, but we are adding it to the law. Amendment 1 makes a change to the purpose paragraph. Amendment 2 clarifies the bill applies to a holder of a Class B or D license. And I would move the amendments, Mr. President, and adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 964 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We'll go to Finance's 14th report. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 66, Senator Rosa Pepp, Prince George's County Alcoholic Beverages, issuance of license near a place of worship or school, favorable, 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from the 22nd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes the Prince George's County Board of License Commissioners to issue an alcoholic beverage license for an establishment that is within 500 feet of a place of worship or 1,000 feet of a school building. There are amendments. The one amendment specifies that the license in question must be held by the same person seeking a new license. The bill is supported by the Senate delegation. I move the committee amendments.
All right. Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 66 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. You know, Prince George's, they do have a full system. They think about the full process, a whole city. We go one by one. All right, yes. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 531, Caroline County Senators, Caroline County Alcoholic Beverages, Barbershop and Beauty Salon License,
Fun
favorable.
times on the Upper Eastern Shore. Senator from the Upper Eastern Shore is the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 531 establishes a barbershop and beauty salon beer and wine alcoholic beverage license in Caroline County. A license holder may provide only up to 12 ounces of beer or only 5 ounces of wine by the glass for on-premise consumption while providing barbershop and beauty salon related services. There was no amendment. There's no fiscal impact. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
It's the sip and shave, right? All right. Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion of the report? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 531 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 941, Senator Mounts, Wacomico County Alcoholic Beverages, Class B beer, wine, and liquor licenses purchases from licensed wholesalers and self-distribution, favorable.
Recognizing Senator from the 37th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 941 in Wacomico County authorizes the holder of a Class Beer, wine, and liquor license to purchase liquor for retail sale from a county dispensary or from a licensed wholesaler. And number 2, establishes that the holder of a Class B beer, wine, and liquor restaurant license that has been issued to a Class 9 limited distillery license may sell products manufactured under the distillery license at the restaurant for on and off premises consumption. There are no amendments. There is no physical impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 941 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1001, Senator Beidel, Alcoholic Beverages Class 4 Limited Winery License Requirements and Authorizations, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1001 is amended to alter the cultivation and production requirements for wineries. It was really a very interesting bill to learn about. So we're allowing some wineries to sell their wine to other wineries for finishing, the finished wine for processing, as well as add things like honey and other agricultural products that are grown in Maryland. So it's all about Maryland agriculture. Amendment number 1 is technical, and amendment number 2 specifies that the Maryland-grown agricultural products for the purpose of making wine does not include cannabis or any product containing THC, clarifies that the agricultural products must be Maryland-grown, and increases the purchase amount. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1001 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1002, Senator Folden, Frederick County Alcoholic Beverages Brewery and Distillery Licenses, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from Carroll County is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1002 establishes a Class DBR license in Frederick County and authorizes the County Board of License Commissioners to license a holder of a Class 5 brewery license, to give the license to a holder of a Class 5 brewery license and serve as the required on-premises consumption permit. This license authorizes the sale of beer brewed at the brewery for on and off premises consumption to the extent the license holder is allowed under their Class 5 brewery license. The bill also establishes a Class DDS license, not to be confused with a dentistry license, which may be issued by the board to a holder of a Class 1 distillery license. The license authorizes the sale of brandy, rum, whiskey, alcohol, and neutral spirits that are distilled, rectified, blended, and bottled at the distillery for on and off premises consumption to the extent the license holder is allowed under their Class 1 distillery license. Amendment number 1 makes the Frederick County Senators the bill sponsor and changes the title of the bill. Amendment number 2 makes some technical changes to the bill. There was no opposition at the committee hearing, and I would move the amendments and adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1002 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1079, Senator McCray, Baltimore City Alcoholic Beverages License Extensions, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognize the senator from the 40th District as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1079 specifies in Baltimore City that a Class BD7 license issued for the premises in certain locations in the Hamilton community must be considered unexpired for the purpose to transfer to another owner at these locations. If the applicant enters into a memorandum of understanding with certain community associations, the amendment specifies for one of the licensed locations under the bill requirements for the memorandum of understanding. I move the amendment and the adoption of favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1079 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to special order calendar number 32. Clerk, read the bill.
Senate Bill 705, Senator Hayes, Health Insurance, Qualified Resident and Employment Enrollment Program, Access to Care Act. Question is in the adoption of the favorable report as amended.
All right, question is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there amendments to the bill or title? It appears so. Chair recognizes Senator from District 1 has an amendment.
Yes, I do, Mr. President.
Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, as that amendment is being passed out, as I read from the Maryland Health Connections website, to be eligible for the health insurance through the Maryland Health Connection, you must live in Maryland, be a U.S. citizen, or be lawful present, not incarcerated, except if you're an incarcerated pending disposition. Mr. President, I have a question for the floor leader.
So let's do if we want to move the amendment so that we have it before us.
Okay.
Mr.
President, I move the amendment.
And then would like to yield on the amendment to the floor leader. Would the senator like to describe the amendment first so that the floor leader can respond to the amendment?
Certainly, absolutely. Mr. President, this amendment simply is a eligibility amendment, and that it strikes resides and substitutes proof of residency, and in the form of a current utility bill, vehicle registration, tax return, government-issued photo ID, mortgage document, or lease agreement, or pay stubs covering at least a 30-day period. Mr. President, I move the amendment, but have questions for the floor leader.
All right, so the senator has moved the amendment. So before the body is the amendment. It looks like the floor leader will yield to a question. Let's go ahead and do the questions, and then we'll see from the floor leader the position of the committee on the amendment.
Certainly, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. So when you apply for this coverage, it states, this is in the website and the understanding of the exchange right now, that you need to provide the information about yourself and each member of your household enrolling. Do you know what some of those information that is required right now?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Birth dates and Social Security. That's the line I'm going down.
No, I get it. And thank you so much for the question, Senator. As it relates to residency, currently the exchange requires several documents in order for proof of residency. This process has gone on for the last 10 years without fail. Some of those items include the individual have to complete an affidavit of residency. They also have to complete a form DHR FIA 1130 verification of living arrangements, which would include, as stated, members of their family. They also have to submit their homeowner's insurance bill, a lease, a mortgage statement, a property tax bill, as well as a utility bill. And so those are the items that the health exchange has been requiring over the last 10 years without any problems.
Certainly, thank you. Mr. President, on the amendment?
On the amendment.
So this amendment, colleagues, health coverage by state already. I don't know if you're aware, colleagues, but in D.C., though it's not long-standing, the locally funded Healthcare Alliance program in D.C. does provide health insurance to low-income residents regardless of immigration status. Now in Virginia, it extends coverage to the contraception to birth, called the unborn child option, which effectively extends coverage to pregnant people who meet eligibility requirements regardless of immigration status. Nothing on purchasing through the exchange for undocumented people. Now, another state, Delaware, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, they have none. And so on the amendment, and the purpose that this amendment needs to be passed is, look, the Access to Care Act should be for all who reside in Maryland, regardless of their immigration status, natural born, naturalized citizen, or a transplant. And I tend to believe that while we have states around us, West Virginia and Pennsylvania, state residents would not be eligible if they came over to Maryland. And this should apply to all status, regardless of their eligibility. So my simple amendment does this. It just adds that the proof of residency in the form of a current utility bill, as we've explained, And I think this is a friendly amendment to make sure that the purpose of the act still happens, but yet to make sure that people from other states don't come over and Maryland taxpayers are affording them the ability to get on our health exchange.
All right. On the amendment, let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the maker of the amendment. I know there's a lot of thought that went into this, and is definitely an attempt to make sure that people aren't taking advantage of our exchange. I would just say that the Maryland Healthcare Exchange has had a process in place, again, for the last 10 years that without fail has worked successfully. We have done a lot of due diligence to make sure that we don't increase the fiscal note on this bill. This amendment itself would provide for a different process that doesn't currently exist today. And I will also add that this amendment was considered during our deliberations in committee and was rejected. So, Mr. President, I would ask colleagues to resist this amendment.
All right. On the amendment, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak on the amendment? Chair recognizes the chair of the committee on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the amendment, and I think my floor leader's done an excellent job. I just want to read something that came from the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange. They indicate that deviating from this process for this population, which is established by federal law and has been in place for 10 years, would be problematic. Thank you.
All right. Any further senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Mr. President, I do appreciate the resistance for this amendment, but I'm not exactly sure that it speaks to the problem that I'm trying to make sure. There again, this piece of legislation allows people to purchase, not the state paying for it, so I'm not exactly sure that the fiscal note goes up for that, but it allows to make sure that people who are in the state of Maryland, regardless of immigration status, that's not what I'm trying to debate. I understand the purpose of this bill. What I am trying to make sure that regardless of immigration status, that somebody who lives in Pennsylvania or West Virginia will now be able to have our exchange. And that's, I believe, is a friendly amendment. I'll leave it at that and just ask for a roll call, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th district has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the amendment before you is in the same vein of the previous amendment we just discussed. This deals with the qualification, what non-citizens would be qualified to purchase health insurance from the exchange. This amendment would have a limitation for any non-resident with whom the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement has placed a detainer. And the detainer is placed for a criminal purpose, criminal reason. If you look at the fiscal note, it talks about legal presence, and the detainer would suggest that that person or individual has a legal problem. In addition, the health exchange already conducts a review of residents. They have this information that needs to be collected. Checking to see if there's an existing detainer on an individual only makes sense, and it would not be a lot of extra work for the exchange. And I move the amendment.
All right, the floor leader, or excuse me, the senator moves a floor amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the maker of the amendment. I understand the intent here. Typically, when someone is detained, that typically means that they're incarcerated, right? And so the bill already provides for individuals that are incarcerated, other than those who are waiting to be charged, they wouldn't qualify for this. Currently, this doesn't exist as a process in the exchange, asking the question if, whether or not people have, if they're detained by ICE or whatever. This would create a new inquiry again, as we've worked really, really hard to keep this fiscal note down. I think the bill with the amendments that we have before us, right. So the bill that we have before us addresses. We also, the exchange don't inquire right now, again, on whether or not they already have charges before them. And so, again, this would create a new inquiry that doesn't exist, which would cost us a little bit more.
All right. On the amendment, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? Chair recognizes the minority whip on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to rise in support of this very good amendment, because when we talk about providing an unearned charitable benefit to people who have come to the country illegally, there's some good arguments on why this bill is wanting to move forward. I get the arguments. I may not agree 100%, but I understand the idea of people who've been here, spending time here, working here. We want, you want the idea, we just want to purchase health insurance. I can disagree philosophically on whether we should allow that or not, but I understand the argument. This amendment seeks to make sure that we don't have someone having an opportunity at this free benefit that they're getting, a chance to use the healthcare exchange, if they are supposed to be, if it's so serious that they have an ICE detainer on them. ICE does not put detainers on people because they simply are here illegally. They put detainers on people that they want to deport because they have committed serious criminal acts, or in some cases it might be somebody who they've deported multiple times and keeps coming back in the country. But generally it's people who are very serious criminals. And to the idea of my friend the floor leader talked about dealing with people who are in custody. The problem is in Maryland we got a lot of people running around with ICE detainers that aren't in custody. And just last week a story broke about a Salvadoran immigrant, illegal immigrant, who has been here accused of several crimes. He actually had a detainer on him from when he was in New Jersey and arrested, and they let him go. He was arrested on February 23rd in connection with the murder of a 2-year-old boy who was tragically killed in crossfire. And we found out that one of our counties had interaction with him and this could have perhaps been stopped. And so we've got people, it's not a lot of people, but we have people who have these detainers on them that are dangerous and violent criminals who are also here illegally. We should be sure we're not going to have any of them be able to access any of our state benefits, resources, state healthcare exchange. And so this is a good amendment, Mr. President, and I would urge the body to support it and ask for a roll call if it hasn't already been asked for.
All right. Let's see. Are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, we can recognize the senator from the 37th, followed by the floor leader.
Yeah, I just want to read from the immigration website. It explains what detainers are. I think that hasn't been clear. Detainers on individuals who have been arrested on criminal charges and who ICE has probable cause to believe are removable non-citizens. The detainer asks the other law enforcement agency to notify ICE before a removable individual is released from custody and to maintain custody of the non-citizen for a brief period of time so that ICE can take custody of that person in a safe and secure setting. These are not individuals who are being held. They're free at the moment. But this is in the context of the exchange. So the exchange, we're talking about the management of the exchange. So allowing these individuals who are fleeing law and then to say, oh, by the way, we're going to allow you to purchase health insurance from the exchange makes no sense just from the perspective of trying to manage the exchange. The amendment is a common sense way to improve what this bill does, and it would hopefully prevent potential problems, which appear to be, inevitable if we're allowing individuals who have detainers on them already to then come to Maryland, set up some form of residency, and then purchase health insurance. And the roll call has been requested, and I'd like to reiterate that. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to provide a little bit of clarity on the detainers. Detainers are essentially issued for people who there's probable cause to believe that an individual is a removable non-citizen, but they still have a hearing and it may be determined that there is no basis for removal. Also, colleagues, I want to remind you what this bill does. This bill allows individuals who are paying taxes here in the state of Maryland to purchase their health insurance. If an individual is incarcerated, placed on a detainer, and have all of these other issues, practically, I think it's a large step to think that the first thing on their mind would be, how would I go in my pocket and pay for health insurance? And so I would ask that the body reject this amendment.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? Senator from the 37th District.
I would just point out there's no requirement in the bill that anyone pay taxes. They have to prove residency.
Okay. All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Senator from District 4 has an amendment.
Yes, Mr. President, I have an
Pages
amendment.
will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. Give us just a moment to get it distributed. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. On amendment number 123521/01, this amendment basically comes back to us as the legislative body of this state, keeping a promise that was made to our state employees that have given a career of service and retired, and then sometime around 2011 we decided to take away that promise, and we took away one of their health benefits. The purpose of this amendment is to exempt those state employees and their spouses hired before April of 1986, where Social Security was not withheld through payroll deductions, thus disqualifying and placing an undue burden to obtain certain federal retirement benefits once reaching full retirement age. This amendment would cover those employees and transition them from Medicare Part D, January 1st of 2025, to being able to retain the state of Maryland sponsored health care benefits. To be able to recognize this finite and diminishing group of state employees found predominantly within the Maryland State Police, whereby an independent and unique retirement system was established within the state of Maryland to finance the retirees' pensions. The state of Maryland has subsequently denied employees payroll contributions into these federal programs during this period and agreed to sponsor lifetime health care benefits under this unique arrangement. In addition, the state of Maryland was to supplement the state retirees and their spouses hired between 1986, after this original group, April of 1986 to July 1st, 2011, whereby Social Security and/or FICA was not sufficiently withheld, thus forcing retirees to incur additional out-of-cost expenses for Medicare Part A. I would also like to see this body include the spouses of those 7 Maryland State Police fallen heroes and those deceased retirees that have left their spouses unable to fight this battle for them today. We made a commitment to those employees. We should stand by that commitment by grandfathering and maintaining the services that were committed to them. And you can start your program, anyone hired after 2011, for the new measures that this body so deemed appropriate. But a promise made, I heard a good friend of mine, again, a promise made is a promise kept. And this body is not keeping their promise and commitment that they made to these state employees. I mean, how would you feel working an entire career for a purpose of service to your state, giving back, knowing that when you took a lower pay because you had the benefits at retirement, and then when you retire some years later, the body decided, you know what, we're going to have to change your health care plan because we don't have any monies to fund this anymore, so we're going to take away this part of it, and you're going to have to pay more when you're on a fixed income as a retiree. It's wholly inappropriate and completely unfair. And with that, Mr. President, I would ask for a favorable on this amendment, and I'd like to move the amendment and ask for a roll call, Mr. President.
All right, the senator has moved the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Yes.
Sorry. We'll hear the floor leader, and then we'll follow it up by the senator from Prince George's. Floor leader for the committee position.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the maker of the amendment. Several of our colleagues around here was questioning whether or not this is a violation of the single subject rule. I'm not sure about that answer, but I would say this is an important issue that I think the senator obviously cares about. It's just not fitting for this bill, right? I think we've gone through pain. We've gone through a lot to make sure that the fiscal note remain mutual. This bill essentially gives individuals an individual to purchase their own insurance. One of the things that we should also consider, colleagues, is that many times the individuals that will be covered by this are often finding themselves in our emergency rooms. And when they find themselves to our emergency rooms, usually they're in worse condition than they would be if they had the opportunity to have their own primary care, because primary care essentially is a preventive care that oftentimes relieve them from the emergency room. But we're paying for that. Every visit that these individuals are going into our emergency rooms are counted under uncompensated care, which we all pay in the healthcare system. Uncompensated care costs are incurred by our healthcare system for which no payment is received. This means that the state that we're already paying for care that uninsured individuals in this population have. And so this is an attempt to give them health insurance, give them an opportunity to pay for their own health insurance, and so they would be covered, so they would get the full complement of services. And when you talk about the population that this may involve, we're estimating about 100,000 undocumented individuals in the state of Maryland. Obviously, not every single one of them will take advantage of this. The estimates that we're hearing is anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 individuals would take advantage of this. And so when we look at all of the things that we've done as it relates to healthcare here in the state of Maryland, whether it's been changes to the ACA and other things, the more people that are taking advantage of our healthcare system reduces the cost for the state of Maryland. I just want to give you a couple of numbers. The total amount of uncompensated care experienced by Maryland hospitals declined from $1.25 billion in 2008 to $107 million in 2017 and $842 million in 2022. When indexed to hospital costs, inflation, and factoring in related hospital assessments, the total savings occurs to over $460 million. In 2008, hospital uncompensated care accounted for 8.3% of patient revenue. By 2021, that declined to a historic low of $4.3 million. The amendment before us, colleagues, as I said, we've worked really hard to make sure that it doesn't have a fiscal note. This amendment will call on us to provide a subsidy to these individuals, these very deserving individuals. And it's an important issue that should probably be discussed in another forum outside the merits of this bill. And so, colleagues, I would ask that you reject this amendment.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? Any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, we'll hear from the maker of the, let's hear from the Chair of Budget and Tax Committee.
I just want to point out that I think the body knows, or at least our committee knows, and we're carefully reviewing a bill from the senator from Western Maryland that is the subject of this amendment, and so we'll be looking very carefully at it. So, thank you.
All right, on the let's hear from the senator from District 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to follow up on a statement that the floor leader made regarding hospital emergency rooms. We know that Maryland has the longest emergency room wait times in the nation. It is embarrassing. Fortunately, the chairs of the two respective health committees commissioned a study, a work group, to better understand and make recommendations on that. The preliminary report just came out last Friday, and one of the major findings is that too many individuals are using hospital emergency rooms as their primary health care because they don't have insurance. So this bill would address that phenomenon as well as many other issues and help Maryland have a more respectable emergency room wait time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? Any speakers have not yet spoken? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate the response, Senator. Thank you kindly. I just wanted to point out, I do have one. I know you talked about there was no additional money. If the floor leader might yield just for a quick follow-up, I apologize.
Will the floor leader yield for a question? Senator may proceed.
So I understand that what you're saying, because in the bill and the language it says that there's not going to be this additional cost because it's a startup. My question is not the cost of starting up this program. My question is, how much is the cost to state taxpayers for the additional 100,000 citizen or immigrants that you're talking about being in this system, and then us having to supplement their amount that they're putting in, because there's going to be an additional cost. So where are those monies coming from?
Mr. President, that's a great question on behalf of the sponsor of the amendment. The actual costs are going to be reduced. That's what all of the analysis is saying. The more people that you have in the insurance, it slows down the rate of increase for everybody else. And especially in this case, where right now a lot of these individuals are using our emergency rooms as their primary care. Like, emergency rooms are supposed to be used for stabilization, right? And so oftentimes, once these individuals are stabilized, all of the other comorbidities that the individual may have are increased and more profound and more chronic, because they're not getting the type of care that they need. And so in all of the estimates that we've seen, because we're adding more people, whether it was adding younger individuals into the exchange and others, every time we add additional populations, the cost to us as citizens is reduced. And so
but we're adding, I understand you're saying it like per person, but we're adding an extra 100,000 people to this. So I guess so overall, the net output by the state is going to increase. It's got to increase. There's no other way to absorb that.
So the difference is, we estimate 100,000 undocumented, right?
Right.
That would assume that every one of them take advantage of it. And in this case, we're thinking there's probably going to be between 4,000 to 6,000 individuals that may actually take advantage of it. But again, they're paying full price, right? And so there's not like the state is subsidizing them in any way. The amendment would have us, that's before us, would have us subsidize a different group of individuals. In the case of the bill as is, There is no subsidy from the state. There's no tax credit. These individuals are paying full price for insurance.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Floyd. Mr. President, and just in closing, I would like to say that, and through this discussion, we're adding potentially 100,000 undocumented people to these healthcare roles, and then who have no requirement to have previously paid taxes or start to pay taxes, while we have 54,000 state retirees who paid taxes for an entire career, and they were set into a system that was set up by this body for failure to not have them paying the Social Security. This body allowed this to happen on our watch and allowed this system to be in place, and now we're going to try to clean our hands of it. I have a problem with that, Mr. President. So, with that, I would respectfully ask for a green vote on this very reasonable amendment, and I would ask for the roll call. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. With the floor leader, you yield for a quick question?
Yes.
So I have a question for you, Mr. Floor Leader. We've heard a lot of discussion about shock trauma. So right now, if this population, you assume like 3,000 to 4,000 people might take advantage of this. Right now, if they're going into shock trauma, who pays for that?
It's paid for through uncompensated care. Pretty much shock trauma got to eat the cost because there's no wrong door here in the state of Maryland as far as care.
So if this bill passes, then the health insurance companies would compensate shock trauma.
Absolutely. If individuals are afforded the opportunity to purchase insurance, their health insurance would pay for it.
Thank you very much. Well, we all support shock trauma, so thank you very much.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? Chair, in explaining his vote, just want to make it very clear, this was a pretty tough call because I think there are two wholly, entirely separate issues, and wanted to allow the debate to occur. But there's a very reasonable conversation happening about pension reform that happened 10 years ago that is wholly and entirely separate from the debate about whether or not people should have the ability to privately buy commercial insurance. Those are two very, very different conversations. With that, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments? Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of Budget and Tax.
I want to change my vote on one of the earlier amendments, Mr. President.
Can we do it after? Let's hold for just a moment. Let's
Whatever
get through
you
the
want
bill. Okay, just remind me after the bill. Do we have any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 705 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Vice Chair of the committee has a vote change. If we could get a picture, please deliver the...
I'd like to change my vote from aye to nay on this amendment.
On the amendment that just occurred?
No, on the amendment I just handed up there.
Okay, on the amendment number, on the first amendment that was debated, we have it? Excellent. All right, any objections? Without objection,
Thank you.
So ordered. Chair recognizes Senator from District 12.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to change my vote on an amendment.
All right, if
on
the page could
previous
collect the senator's form, and if we could...
This is Senate Bill 705, Amendment 273024 from green to red.
From green to red, all right. I'll make sure we have that one up there. Thank you, Senator. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, so ordered. All right, that does it. Any other vote issues? If not, let's go to Special Order Calendar number 33. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 1, Senator Augustine, Electricity and Gas, Retail Supply, Regulation, and Consumer Protection. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended.
Chair recognizes question is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion on the amended report? If not, any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Do we have any amendments? Chair recognizes the floor leader has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. Give us just a moment, Senator, while we get it up on the board. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment simply clarifies that as it relates to commercial, that retail customers, that this really only applies to this piece of legislation only applies to retail customers and just clarifies that it does not apply to commercial in a couple of parts of the bill. I move the amendment.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Are there any discussion or objections to the Senator's amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there further amendments? Chair recognizes the Senator from the 42nd District has an amendment.
I do.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Pages will
President.
collect and distribute the Senator's amendment. Give us just a moment, Senator. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is a very brief and clarifying amendment. Section 7 of the bill, let me just read it, it's one sentence, states that this act shall be construed to apply only prospectively and may not be applied or interpreted to have any effect on or application to any electricity supply agreement or gas supply agreement that is in effect on or before December 31st, 2024. Now, there are some people who have these alternative energy contracts in existence with alternative energy companies. And their contracts provide, as the PSC permitted them to, provide that they would automatically be rolled over or continued unless the customer were to give notice that he wants to terminate the contract. And so that the existing contracts provide that they're automatically going to be rolled over at the end of the existing term. So what this amendment does is clarify the intent of Section 7. Let me read it as it would be amended. Shall be further enacted that this act shall be construed to apply only prospectively and may not be applied or interpreted to have any effect on or application to any electricity supply agreement or gas supply agreement that is in effect on or before December 31st, 2024, including an electricity supply agreement or gas supply agreement that is in effect on or before December 31st, 2024, and renewed in accordance with the terms of the existing agreement after December 31st, 2024. As I say, it's a clarifying amendment. I hope that it will be received as a friendly amendment. Thank you.
All right, Senators move the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask the body to resist this amendment. We are in the process of unwinding some of the practices, the negative practices that are out there. That is the reason why we are seeking to stop this at this date. And so I would ask for the body to resist this amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, further discussion. Chair recognizes, nope. All right, on the amendment, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The noes have it. The Senator's amendment is rejected. Are there further amendments to the bill or title? Chair recognizes Senator from the 37th District has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the Senator's amendment. As we are collecting, long day today, we've got this and another bill, so we should be able to get through everything today. We'll see. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleague, this amendment just clarifies that the provisions of the bill will not override any existing contracts. Those contracts under the bill that would be affected would have to begin after January 1, 2025. There are current contracts in place, so this amendment is intended just to clarify the application of the provisions of the bill.
All right, Senator moves the
And
amendment.
I'd like to ask for a roll call vote.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Similar to the previous amendment, I'm going to ask the body to resist this amendment because what this will do is it will lock in some of the pricing that is above the default rate that is already there, and that's what we're seeking to provide relief to Marylanders from the $150 million in excess charges that they are paying right now. So I would ask that we resist this amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, Senators move the amendment. Floor leaders urge the body to reject. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 27 votes in the negative. The senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments? Chair, okay, all right. Recognize the minority leader has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I got it.
All right. Well, almost. There it is. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As written, the bill requires that retail electric suppliers offer products that are tied to the standard office of service price, specifically related to the 12-month trailing average. But as we move forward with this bill and end up going back to a monopoly, it's important for the few retailers that will remain in Maryland to fully understand the guidelines and how they can compete in this marketplace. So this amendment simply defines what SOS is related to the costs that are in SOS, because that's not just the cost of electricity. There's also administrative costs, there's also indirect cost, and frankly, since the electric companies administer SOS, they also make a small profit with that as well too. So very simply, this amendment will also then require the Public Service Commission to review this information and biannually set an all-in SOS price. So if we're going to require that the suppliers are measured against SOS, I think we need to really know what an all-in SOS price is. And with that, Mr. President, I ask to move the amendment.
All right, Senator has moved the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm going to ask that we resist this amendment. The SOS market is a robust market that has a significant oversight, although it is not direct, but includes the PJM, the OPC, the PSC, and other stakeholders as a part of the process. It also does already include certain mechanisms that are there for recovery. It's working well, and it would be burdensome and would be disruptive if we actually changed it to incorporate pieces of the PSC. It's already quite clear and transparent in the way that it currently functions, so I would ask that we resist this amendment.
All right, Senator, on the amendment, any further discussion? Any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the minority leader on the amendment.
And Mr. President, I might reply that this bill completely disrupts the retail supply market as we know it now. So, you know, to put a little bit more burden on the Public Service Commission to make sure that those retailers that remain can actually still operate in Maryland, I don't think that this is too far of an ask. It is very simple. Those retailers need to know what an all-in SOS is so that they can compete here. If they don't have that information, again, they're having to then rely on this 12-month trailing average that, again, the Public Service Commission will have to set and determine what that is. So this is not asking the Public Service Commission to do anything more other than truly define what an all-in SOS is. And again, I would ask for a roll call and to support the amendment.
All right, on the amendment, any senators who have not yet spoken? If not, let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I previously stated, the current process for the SOS, which generates the pricing that will help us to be able to understand what the 12-month trailing number is, already is functioning and will be able to provide to us the information that we need. This amendment would disrupt that and would make it such that we would not be able to clearly understand, actually, contrary to the initial suggestion, by having additional new definitions that we don't currently have. We already know what the SOS is, and so I would just ask that we resist this amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes to the negative. The senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the minority whip. Has an amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have an amendment.
Senators, or pages will collect and distribute senator's amendment.
And Mr. President, I could, as they distribute it, I could just discuss the issue that I'm concerned about.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I was looking through this bill, and I'm not an issue that I've spent as much time on, and a concern that I've identified is we're getting rid of the bill as amended allows for people to auto-renew for standard non-green energy products, but it does not allow them to auto-renew. It does not allow them to auto-renew for the green energy products that they've signed up for with these companies. And so the amendment would just restore that and say you can still auto-renew for the green energy products. I think sometimes my understanding is we're worried about consumer protection with this bill, and I certainly understand that, but I think it makes more sense to just keep auto renewals in place. Pretty much every kind of service in Maryland that's offered, we have auto renewals for, and you can affirmatively stop it when you're ready to stop it. And this bill right now, as written, would say that basically green retail energy services is about the only service in Maryland you can't auto renew. And so all this would do would simply allow green product customers to give their affirmative consent to be auto renewed, and for no longer, of course, than the original contract length. Mr. President, I know there was some concern expressed about green energy, some out there in the media a little bit, so I think this might help just to make sure folks can still auto-renew these policies, and I would move the amendment.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the protections that we wanted to make sure that we incorporated into this new green market was that we made sure that individuals would have to, because there's not the price ceiling on it, that they would have to regularly be able to review the pricing that they've got. And a way to do that was to make sure that there were not auto renewals. Colleagues, I'm sure many of you have experienced when you've gotten something in a subscription or something like that you have, and then all of a sudden you stop, the price goes up, but you kind of aren't paying attention to it, and next thing you know, it just auto renews and you're losing track of it. Well, this is kind of similar to that, and we want to make sure that we have that protection. This has also been an area that there have been some concerns and some abuses that have occurred where some of the suppliers have made it difficult for folks to get out of their contracts, so that it's hard. If you can't reach them, you can't get them on the phone, you can't necessarily do a change at the website, which is, again, a reason to not to allow the auto renew. The reason that we did, just so that the body is aware, the reason why we did allow for the auto renew in the general market is simply because we know that we will maintain this protection by making sure that we are not exceeding that 12-month trailing average for our consumers. And because of that, we actually made a concession to the industry, where the industry suggested that there was a certain amount of cost that was associated with re-signing people up. And so this was one of those places where we thought that maybe we could do that there, but we must maintain that protection because of the abuses that have been there. When we do not have the price cap in the green market, I'd ask for the body to resist this amendment. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, Chair, any senators who have not yet spoken? If not, let's hear from the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask for a roll call on the amendment. I wonder if I could ask the floor leader a question just for my own education.
Will the floor leader yield?
Senator may proceed. I appreciate the explanation of why the auto renew was kept for the non-green versus the green energy, but I guess my question would be, the folks isn't there an acquisition cost for the green energy suppliers as well to go get new customers and have to re-sign them up? So
yeah.
Why are we smoothing the path for, and I understand it was a compromise, but why not smooth the path? Because we actually want more people to stay signed up on they're usually willing to pay a little more to go green. So why not just accept the amendment?
It's a consumer protection because while we are allowing for there to be an additional price and additional cost that is associated with this place, we are going to learn from past experience, which is that without certain protections, this has been a policy that has actually been abused. And so we do not want to, given the fact that there will not be those price protections inside of here, we don't want to make, we want to make sure that they, that the energy suppliers who are a part of this have to come back to and not lock people in and make it very difficult for them to get out. So it's a protection that is there because again, we have the rest of this being an open market. That's the reason.
So so the green energy firms were not able to do what the non-green side was as far as doing a 12-month rolling average, or?
No, well, right now, they do whatever they want. And this is where we've learned, this is where we've gotten this experience that auto renewal has been used as a tactic to keep people in pricing that is way higher, and basically that they're just being taken advantage of and made difficult for them to get out of the situation. And so that's what we're trying to make sure that we have an open market for this green energy because we want to encourage renewables, but we still know we got to have some protections in there for folks, and that's why this is there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. President, just in speaking in support of the amendment, just in closing, the green customers that have signed up for these green energy products generally are not just casually or accidentally doing it because they already know that they're incurring a little more cost. It's a customer who's usually done their homework. Not that there can't be occasionally people who do make mistakes, but again, we have a situation where we're trying to, I think, overly regulating a choice that people are already choosing to go green with their energy, and I don't think we should make it harder for them. I think we should be making it easier, and I think this bill with this is maybe a mistake here. So I would press my amendment with a roll call and ask for the body's support.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Recognizing the senator from the 37th district, senator has an amendment. All right, pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. To move things along, is it okay to explain the amendment while it's being passed out?
Yes, but let's just get it on the board first so we have it on computers. And once we have it on the board, we can get it going. We just want to make sure it's the right one. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. This amendment addresses a portion of the bill that deals with utility financing. And the way I understand the bill to work is it would disrupt what is known as purchase of receivables. And to describe it a little more in plain language, collecting utility bills. And to my understanding, that is handled right now by the utility companies, not the suppliers. And the bill would change the way those purchase of receivables are collected. Currently, this is the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission. There's an open proceeding at the Public Service Commission right now to deal with purchase of receivables. There are not consolidated billing, or there isn't wide consolidated billing, meaning the suppliers would actually collect the utility bills. So the amendment would change the bill to the extent that it would preserve the Public Service Commission's jurisdiction, and in order to ensure that there is an effective way to handle this financing of utilities. Thank you. And right, I'll ask for a recorded vote.
All right, Senator has moved the amendment and requested a roll call. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm going to ask that we resist this amendment, and I'm going to explain to you why. This is a situation which is in some ways a little bit unbelievable, quite frankly, where the incentives are actually not aligned. The way that it is currently set up, the retail suppliers, who many of them are going out there slamming our neighbors, just getting their numbers or whatever, or just have these salespeople out there on the floor going around again, knocking on our elderly neighbors' homes and just getting their numbers, stuff like that, just doing that for whatever reason, or just getting people who also at Walmart, or not to use the store's name, I apologize about that, but at some place they go and get people to sign, they get the numbers and stuff like that without any regard for what they are doing. Here's the thing. They don't care who they sign up. You know why? Because if they're bad customers, they don't actually have to worry about collecting the money. The money has to be actually collected by the utilities. It provides a negative incentive to these folks to do business and try to be good about who they are trying to sign up for work, for their product. It is just a disalignment of the incentives and has been an abusive practice. This is the reason why I'm going to ask that we resist this amendment. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Just very quickly, I would point out that the purpose of the amendment is to preserve the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission. They have a open proceeding right now to focus on this. If there is a nefarious activity, that's where it should be handled, not through statute.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 29 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Any further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the minority leader. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is simply just a parity amendment. As we heard when I presented the last amendment, there was a lot of burden that is being placed on the Public Service Commission. This will simply eliminate that burden by allowing retail suppliers to offer at or below SOS. So eliminates the 12-month trailing language that, again, Public Service Commission would have to figure what that is. Makes it very simple. We heard in testimony yesterday that as long as they provided at a penny below SOS, they were allowed to remain in the marketplace. I want to make sure that that is accurate, that we eliminate this 12-month trailing average and, again, allow parity and the retail suppliers to be able to offer products that are at or below SOS. So I would ask that we move the amendment and ask for a roll call vote.
All right, Senator has moved the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask the body to resist this amendment. And the reason I'm going to ask the body to resist the amendment is because if it were just as a point in time, there is volatility in this marketplace. By allowing for there to be this 12-month trailing average, it will smooth it out and actually works more in keeping with how the energy markets actually work. It avoids that volatility, which is what this amendment, if it were adopted, would do. So with that, I would ask that we resist this amendment. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, any senators who wish to speak who have not yet spoken? If not, let's hear from the minority leader or maker of the amendment.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Again, I think the important part is with this legislation, we are completely moving away from a competitive market. As Senate Bill 1 passes through both chambers, when this is done, Maryland will lose businesses as a result of this. The retail suppliers will get out of Maryland, and the monopolies that are already in place, the electric companies, will have even more power through what this is. So we need to find a way to try to keep some of these businesses in Maryland, and we do recognize that over the years, yes, there have been some bad players. And that's been identified, and I think that this bill does have some things that will help make sure that doesn't happen anymore. But to completely eliminate the retail suppliers and their ability to compete with the monopolies, again, is just going to cost or drive up electricity costs. And we have seen that in other states that have done this same type of legislation, where they do not have competition anymore. Their SOS prices have gone up much higher than the rates here in Maryland as a result of that. So yes, there has been some money that's been spent, maybe unprudently and maybe out of mistakes, but overall, a competitive market has kept our electricity prices down. This amendment, again, just simply allows the retailers to be able to compete with the monopolies by removing that 12-month trailing average and say that they can sell at or below SOS, which is the same cost as the monopolies are doing. So again, I'd ask that we look favorably on this amendment and try to save some businesses here in Maryland.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Let's hear from the floor.
Yep,
Any senators who have not yet spoken wish to speak? If not, let's hear from the floor leader.
Just briefly, energy prices are up across the board. It is not something that has to actually do with the markets. There has been an increase in the cost of the energy. On this actual amendment, though, this amendment, if it were adopted, as I stated previously, would allow for greater volatility. It is in versus making sure that we have this smoothed out price, which is what we really want to do. And I just want to remind the body that even in keeping with the maker of the amendment shared, we're open for business here. You just can't be taking advantage of Marylanders. If you can make money under what they would otherwise get for a default service, we want you here. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1 is ordered printed for third reading. Chair recognizes the senator from District 11.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to change my vote on Amendment 913724/1.
All right, if our page could collect the form, we have the marker of it. Are there any objections to the, from what to what? I'm sorry, Senator.
From yay to nay.
From yay to nay. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right. We've got one more calendar, number 34. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 1, Senator Kelly, affirming the Federal Equal Rights Amendment. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended.
All right. Question is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion on the report or objections to the report? Without objection, the report is adopted. Chair recognizes the floor leader. Floor leader has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Should we pass it
Yes,
out? It's a very short amendment.
Yes, pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. It's just a appreciate the floor leader and bill sponsor's accommodation here.
Absolutely. We will drag it out as the pages dutifully pass it out. Thank you to them for handing it out to everybody. And I think I can explain it.
We are
I
ready.
see it getting to the back. This is just a sponsor amendment that adds the Senate President as a sponsor.
All right. Senators, move the amendment. Any objections to the amendment? Without a roll call, yeah. Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there further amendments? Further amendments to the bill or its title? Further amendments? All right. If not, Senate Bill 1, Senate Joint Resolution 1 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, that does it. Desk is clear. Let's go ahead. We got a busy day. We got a lot happening. Let's check with the Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance will meet at 1:30. We only have 8 bills today, 62 witnesses, and we are not voting today. Thank you.
All right, all right. Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will start at 1:30. We've got 14 bills, 108 witnesses. If we can be tight with our questions, there's a couple bills, at least 2 bills we'd like to vote out of the committee today. So maybe on voting. Thank you, Mr. President.
Excellent, thank you, Senator. Chair of Budget and Tax.
Okay, big day for Budget and Tax. All of you have been patiently waiting to see what we've been doing. Our subcommittees have been working very hard, and they will be reporting out today at 2 o'clock. The capital subcommittee will do the PAYGO decisions, not all the capital projects that you are looking for, just in case you were wondering. So when they're not there, there's a reason they're not there, because it comes later in the capital budget. At 2:15, the HHS will report. At 3:30, Public Safety will report. And at 2:45, Education will report. And then at 4 o'clock, we'll be voting.
All right, busy day in budget and tax. Big day. All right, judicial proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet today at 1:30 for bill hearings. We have 17 bills and 90 witnesses.
All right, excellent. Other standing committees, select committees, joint committees, delegation. Yes, Senator from Howard and Anne Arundel.
Rise for a late introduction of a bill from the Howard County delegation.
All right, Howard County delegation, we have a bill, request to suspend the rules. All right, let's collect it. If we could turn it in, and Senator, could you explain the bill, please?
Sure. This is a Howard County Senator's bill setting up a task force to examine the transfer tax distribution formula. This was delayed in drafting to match the House version, which has already been dropped over in the House side. So that's why it's late.
All right. Question is whether the Senate will suspend the rules for the purpose of a late introduction. Senator has made the motion. Are there any objections to the motion? Any objections to the motion? Without objection, the bill, rules having been suspended, the bill is accepted for a late introduction. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 1186, Howard County Senators, Howard County Task Force to study revenue options for school capital needs.
All right, the bill will be referred to the Rules Committee. All right, any further announcements? Yes, Chair of the Prince George's County delegation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Prince George's County will meet today at 5 p.m. in the Neal Conference Room. And if I might, Mr. President, I have two more other hats to put on real quick. So the Pension Subcommittee will not meet tomorrow morning. That meeting is canceled. Pensions will not meet tomorrow morning. That meeting is canceled. And the third hat, Mr. President, if I might, the Veterans Caucus will be meeting at the Governor's House tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for breakfast with the annual Veterans Caucus breakfast.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
All right, Senator from District 10.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I want to encourage you to become part of the Nation of Lifesavers. This is sponsored by the American Heart Association. You are cordially invited to join the American Heart Association in a friendly competition to learn hands-on CPR. On Thursday, March 7th, from 9 to 10 a.m., swing by Lawyers Mall. As you make your way to the State House, take just a few minutes to discover the life-saving technique of on-hands CPR, which chambers will have the highest percentage of participation in members. Let us unite in our mission to turn a nation of bystanders into a nation of lifesavers. See you there.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. Recognizing the co-chair of the Protocol Committee.
Yes, Mr. President, and I don't have the names, but I did notice, with the help of the Protocol co-chair, we are graced today with the presence of the House pages in the balcony above you, so we could give the House pages a big round of applause and welcome to the Senate.
Welcome to the House pages. Thank you all for joining us today. Get to see some legislative action, some real work happening in the Senate today. Excellent. All right, any further business? Any further business? If not, let's go ahead and do a quorum. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Senator from the Upper Eastern Shore.
Just a very quick announcement. A very notable day yesterday in the American Samoa, if you haven't heard already. Baltimore resident and businessman Jason Palmer won the Democrat primary convention for President of the United States, resoundingly defeating President Joe Biden, 51-40. And those are not percentages, by the way. Those are the actual number of the 91 people that did vote.
Wow.
But Mr. Palmer said that he had been campaigning remotely, doing Zoom town halls, talking to people, listening to them about their concerns and what matters to them. So maybe a message that says that never underestimate your opponent, but certainly congratulations to Maryland resident Jason Palmer.
Fascinating, fascinating. Did not see that. I hadn't seen that. Had a Zoom with the American Samoa head of the legislative branch there, and there were chickens going off in the background. It was a fascinating Zoom. American Samoa would love to get there at some point. All right, let's see. Do we have any other business? If not, let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
All right, has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 45 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Thursday, March 7th at 10 a.m.
Without objection, so ordered. Have a wonderful day, everyone. See you tomorrow.